Greetings and salutations, one and all. Welcome to the night shift. How you doing?
So let the good vibes come in. So let we walk and come in. Bring the good vibes, bring the good line, bring the good times again. Bring the good vibe for all the people them. I love any vibe, it's addicted to me. So now that we free up and do what we feel and not taking no sharpness, no orders from no one. I'm gonna do what my body wants. Cause right now to me I feel like nothing can go wrong. I feel like a winner. The energy around me is so strong. I live the life for me. I do it for me. I just enjoying myself. There's no jumpy in me. So let the good vibes come in. And then we walk and come in. I want you to but here when I call you know what I mean. So let the good vibes float my way. No heavy vibes spoiling my day. So let the good times come in. It's good vibes for real, good times for real, good vibes for them, good vibes for me. I deal with my friends, it's good times for we, good vibes again, good times for real. Don't have no time for enemies. Good vibes for them, good vibes for me. I deal with my friends, it's good times for we, good vibes again, good times for real. Just enjoy yourself, yeah. So, don't be afraid to come wind up on me. I want you to put on your focus on me. I'm not taking no sharpness, no orders from no one. I'm gonna do what my body wants. Cause right now to me I feel like nothing can go wrong. I feel like a winner. The energy around me is so strong. I live the life for me. I do it for me. I just enjoying myself. There's no jumpy in me. So let the good vibes come in. And then we walk and come in. I want you to first here when I call you know what I mean. So let the good vibes float my way. No heavy vibes spoiling my day. So let the good times come in. It's good vibes for real, good times for real, good vibes for them, good vibes for me. I deal with my friends, it's good times for we, good vibes again, good times for real. Don't have no time for enemies. Good vibes for them, good vibes for me. I deal with my friends, it's good times for we, good vibes again, good times for real. Just enjoy yourself. So many good vibes come in. So now we walk and come in. Bring the good vibes, bring the good line, bring the good times again. Bring the good vibe for all the people them. Cause right now to me I feel like nothing can go wrong. I feel like a winner. The energy around me is so strong. I live the life for me.
Wanna say big ups to each and everyone locked in right now.
Enjoying myself.
Officially, I wanna say good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good day to you wherever you are in the world.
And then we walk up.
Welcome to the night shift.
I want you to first here when I call you know.
Tonight we do a thing we call Healthy Love.
Let the good vibes float my way. No heavy vibes spoiling my
I wanna say thank you to all the affiliates.
for me.
One Harmony Radio across the pond in the UK.
Good vibes
Top of the morning to you guys.
for me. I deal with my friends. It's
Big ups to those out of New York, Ireland, worldwide,
for real.
demonstrating the power of music.
Enemies. Good vibes for them.
Big ups to those on over there in New Jersey,
Again, good times for real.
NIE Radio.
So many good vibes come in.
Skipping across to the Lone Star State. Big ups to those in Texas,
Bring the good vibes, bring
WGLRO, home of the Donny Walker Morning Show, the People Station.
for all the people there.
Big ups to you.
I feel like nothing can go wrong.
Those locked in on the Foundation Radio Network, ClintonLindsay.com. So glad to have you.
Live the life for me. I do it for me.
Dusik Radio,
Enjoying myself.
Hollywood Media Group,
Being me.
Hollywood Radio, Dusik Media Group.
And then we walk and
Yeah, I mix them up sometimes. Just forgive me.
Good vibes again, good times for real.
Thank you for the support.
Good vibes coming.
Big ups to those who are locked in on Facebook Live.
Bring the good vibes.
I can't wait till kevinstew.com is back, boy.
Bring the good vibes for all you people.
But until then, some good news.
Nothing can go wrong. I feel like
Some of you might have known that I created a podcast from the night shift to DJ Kevin Stew.
for me. I do it for me.
Now there's a podcast site.
In my
The night shift to DJ Kevin Stew.
in me. So many good vibes come.
.wordpress.com.
Come me. Our universe here when I'm
Yeah, man, it's a good look, you know. Even if it's temporary, it's still a good look.
going on. The energy around me is so strong.
Go give it a visit.
Life for me. I do it for me.
And please support the podcast, support the broadcast.
It's so chummy in me.
There's a donate button on the website.
How we walk and come me. Our universe here when
You have the option to support
me.
the night shift to DJ Kevin Stew as well as the Saturday Stew.
Boiling my
Yeah, there's a Saturday Stew podcast also. And you know, I do the Saturday Stew on Reggae Global Radio every Saturday from 8 p.m. Eastern.
I live the life for me. I do it for me. I just enjoying myself. There's no chummy in me. So many good vibes come me. How we walk and come me.
Inviting you to call a friend, tell a friend, call an enemy.
Now call you know what.
Friends of your friends, friends of your enemies, enemies of your friends.
Suit my
Call everybody.
no heavy vibes spoiling my day. So many good
Tell them it's the night shift to DJ Kevin Stew Healthy Love Night. And tonight I would say we're picking up where we left off last week, but that wouldn't entirely be true. What we're gonna do is one of the things that I had initially planned for last week, and last week turned out to be something, although I didn't plan it, worked out beautifully. I could not have had it any better. Thank you to Casey Gee for being the unplanned guest for the evening. He shared his story of being diagnosed with lymphoma and immediately starting treatment to the point where just last week, before the broadcast, on Monday, would have been probably his very last chemotherapy session. So, you know, a victory there. You know, we get a win out of that one. And that I did that broadcast starting to look at lymphoma as a result of my young cousin being diagnosed 2 weeks ago, and then last week succumbing to the cancer. I was trying to find the best possible words to use. She transitioned as a result of lymphoma last week, and I had gotten the news just before my Saturday Stew broadcast. So it was important that I looked at lymphoma. And this week, I wanted to look at some types of lymphoma. Will I get through all of it? I don't know. But we want to look at types of lymphoma nonetheless. So, those of you just joining in, welcome to the broadcast. You haven't missed anything. I do invite you to participate by way of texting, calling. You can use WhatsApp, you can use Telegram. The numbers to call, numbers to text, 773-789-STEW, 773-789-7839. Of course, those of you who don't use those methods of communication, you want to use Skype, that's an option too. Kevin.stew is my Skype handle. No need to be shy. And like Casey did last week when he called in and completely changed the broadcast. And change is not a bad thing. And when I say he completely changed it, it's not a bad thing. I am very grateful for the information. I'm an information junkie, hence why I do this. So, lymphoma. It's a cancer that starts in the cells that are part of the body's immune system. Now, knowing which type of lymphoma you have is important because it affects your treatment options and your prognosis or your outlook. Now, if you're not sure which type of cancer you have, well, your doctor should be able to guide you in the right direction where that is concerned. But, we know sometimes we end up getting misguided. So, types of lymphoma. First, let's take a look at Hodgkin lymphoma. If you've been diagnosed with Hodgkin lymphoma or you're worried about it, you likely have a lot of questions. So, the first would be the logical question to ask, right? What is Hodgkin lymphoma? Now, typically, cancer starts when cells start to grow out of control. Getting distracted by messages here. I don't know if it's a message for this broadcast. Okay, no. So it starts when cells start to grow out of control. Cells in nearly any part of the body can become cancer cells and can then spread to other parts of the body. Now, of course, you can look at what is cancer to get a better idea of how cancers start and how they spread and types of treatment. But specifically tonight, what we're looking at is lymphoma. And lymphomas are cancers that start in the white blood cells called lymphocytes. And there are two main types of lymphoma. You have Hodgkin and you have non-Hodgkin. They behave, spread, and respond to treatment differently. So it is important for you to know which one it is that you actually have. More importantly, it is important for the doctor to know which one you have. Now, to understand what Hodgkin lymphoma is, as according to cancer.org, it helps to know about the lymph system, also known as the lymphatic system. The lymph system is part of the immune system, which helps fight infections and other diseases. The lymph system also helps control the flow of fluids in the body. The lymph system is made up mainly of cells called lymphocytes, a type of white blood cell. There are two main types of lymphocytes. You have your B lymphocytes, your B cells, and these make proteins called antibodies to help protect the body from germs, being whether bacterial or viral. And you have T lymphocyte cells, your T cells. And there are many types of T cells. Some T cells destroy germs or abnormal cells in the body. Other T cells help boost or slow the activity of other immune system cells. Now, Hodgkin lymphoma usually starts in the B lymphocytes. Lymph tissue is in many parts of the body. So, lymphoma can start just about anywhere. The major sites of lymphoid tissue are lymph nodes, which are bean-sized collections of lymphocytes and other immune system cells. They are found throughout the body, including inside the chest, abdomen, and pelvis. They are connected to each other by a system of lymphatic vessels. Now, with your lymph vessels are a network of tiny tubes, similarly to blood vessels. And these connect lymph nodes and carry immune cells in a clear fluid called lymph. Lymph is collected from around the body and put into the bloodstream. The spleen is an organ that is under the lower ribs on the left side. The spleen is part of your immune system. It makes lymphocytes and other immune system cells. It also stores healthy blood cells and filters out damaged blood cells, bacteria, and cell waste. The bone marrow is the liquid, the spongy tissue inside certain bones. New blood cells, including some lymphocytes, come from the bone marrow. That is where they're made. Then you have the thymus. And this is a small organ behind the upper part of the breastbone and in front of the heart. It's important for T lymphocyte development. You have adenoids and tonsils. Now, these are a collection of lymph tissue in the back of your throat. They help make antibodies against germs that are breathed in or swallowed. So, when your tonsils get inflamed, you know what's up. These nodes, this aspect of your defense, your immune system is active. Then you have the digestive tract. The stomach, intestines, and other major organs also have lymph tissues. Now, although Hodgkin lymphoma can start almost anywhere, most often it starts in lymph nodes in the upper part of the body. The most common sites are in the chest, neck, and under the arms. Hodgkin lymphoma most often spreads through the lymph vessels from lymph node to lymph node. Rarely, late in the disease, it can invade the bloodstream and spread to other parts of the body, such as the liver and lungs, or even the bone marrow. Different types of Hodgkin lymphoma can grow and spread differently and may be treated differently. Classic Hodgkin lymphoma, the CHL, amounts for more than 9 in 10 cases of Hodgkin lymphoma in developed countries. The cancer cells in CHL are called Reed-Sternberg cells. These cells are usually an abnormal type of B lymphocyte. Enlarged lymph nodes in people with CHL usually have a small number of Reed-Sternberg cells with a lot of normal immune cells around them. These other immune cells cause most of the swelling in the lymph nodes. Your classic Hodgkin lymphoma has 4 subtypes. There's your nodular sclerosis Hodgkin lymphoma, NSCHL. And this is the most common type of Hodgkin disease in developed countries. It accounts for about 7 out of 10 cases. It's most common in teens and young adults, but it can occur in people of any age, and it tends to start in lymph nodes in the neck or chest. Then you have mixed cellularity Hodgkin lymphoma, MCCHL. This is the second most common type, found in about 4 out of 10 cases. It's seen mostly in people with HIV infection. It is also found in children or in the elderly. It can start in any lymph node, but most often occurs in the upper half of the body. Then you have lymphocyte-rich Hodgkin lymphoma, and this subtype is not common at all. It usually occurs in the upper half of the body and is rarely found in more than a few lymph nodes. Lymphocyte-depleted Hodgkin lymphoma is a very rare form of Hodgkin disease. It is seen mainly in older people, and those with HIV infection. It's more aggressive than other types of Hodgkin lymphoma and likely to be advanced when first found. It's most often in lymph nodes in the abdomen, as well as in the spleen, liver, and bone marrow. nodular lymphocyte predominant Hodgkin lymphoma, NLPHL, accounts for about 5% of cases. The cancer cells in NLPHL are large cells called popcorn cells because they look like popcorn, which are variants of Reed-Sternberg cells. And you may also hear these cells called lymphocytic and histocytic, or L&H cells. NLPHL usually starts in lymph nodes in the neck and under the arm, and it can occur in people of any age, and is more common in men than in women. This type of HL of Hodgkin lymphoma tends to grow more slowly and is treated differently from classic types. So, typically we hear someone has lymphoma and we just say, okay, they got cancer and they need cancer treatment. And that's it. But, it's a little bit more than that. So that is your Hodgkin lymphoma. Now, I might have a little bit more on this one actually. One of the risk factors when it comes to Hodgkin lymphoma. Let me touch on this real quick. A risk factor is anything that affects your chance of getting a disease, such as cancer. Different cancers have different risk factors. Some cancers' risk factors, like smoking or being overweight, can be changed, and others, like a person's age or family history, those can't be changed. A few risk factors make a person more likely to develop Hodgkin lymphoma, but it is not always clear why these factors increase risk. Having a risk factor, or even many risk factors, doesn't mean that you'll definitely get the disease. And many people who do get Hodgkin lymphoma have few or no known risk factors. The EBV, Epstein-Barr virus, causes infectious mononucleosis, often called just mono. And people who have had mono have an increased risk of Hodgkin lymphoma. But even though the risk is higher than for people who have not had mono, it is still very small, about 1 in 1,000. So it's quite rare. And the exact role of Epstein-Barr virus in the development of Hodgkin lymphoma isn't very clear either. Many people are infected with EBV, but very few people develop Hodgkin lymphoma. Parts of the virus are found in Reed-Sternberg cells in about 1 out of 4 people with classic Hodgkin lymphoma in the US. But most people with Hodgkin lymphoma have no signs of Epstein-Barr virus in their cancer cells. Weird, right? And this is one of the reasons why medicine is a practice, because they keep looking for answers. And a lot of time these answers are quite elusive because of the mystery of the human body. Now, people can be diagnosed with Hodgkin lymphoma at any age, but it is most common in early adulthood, especially in persons in their 20s, and in late adulthood after age 55. It occurs more frequently in males than in females. Brothers and sisters of young people with this disease have higher risk of Hodgkin lymphoma. The risk is very high for an identical twin of a person with Hodgkin lymphoma. But a family link is still uncommon. Most people with Hodgkin lymphoma do not have a family history of it. It is not clear why family history might increase risk, It might be because family members have similar childhood exposures to certain infections, like quite similarly to Epstein-Barr virus, because they shared inherited gene changes that make them more likely to get Hodgkin lymphoma, or some combination of these factors. It could be anything. The risk of Hodgkin lymphoma is increased in people infected with HIV, and we all know that is a virus that causes AIDS. People who take medicines to suppress the immune system after an organ transplant, and people with autoimmune diseases are also at higher risk than normal for Hodgkin lymphoma. Now, there's also non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Now, one of the interesting things about non-Hodgkin lymphoma is you have two types of it. You have the non-Hodgkin lymphoma in adults, and you have it in children. Quite interesting, right? But before we get into that, let me just say, and I didn't say it earlier, thank you to my segment sponsor, Policy Media Group, for providing sponsorship for this first segment in the broadcast. When being in a moment is priceless, you want to give them a call for innovative streaming and recording solutions. 754-999-6020. That's 754-999-6020. Tell them DJ Kevin Stew sent you. You heard about them on the night shift with DJ Kevin Stew, yeah? Cool. And as we get into this next segment, I want to say thank you to Althea and her Healing Heavenly Hands. Althea SU is a licensed massage therapist operating out of Broward County, North Miami-Dade, and South Palm Beach counties. She comes to you with over 20 years of experience. She brings her tables, her oil, one table she has, her oils, and of course her Healing Heavenly Hands. She comes COVID-free. She'd like to leave that way. So if you have the virus, don't call her. But if you're in Broward County, North Miami-Dade, or South Palm Beach counties, please give her a call. She'll come and take care of your aching muscles. Of course, if you're looking for a personal trainer, you can call that same number, because Althea recently got certified as a personal trainer. So she has the business Chioli, change your lifestyle, change your life. And so as a personal trainer, she puts your muscles in pain, and as a massage therapist, she can soothe them. Give her a call once again, 954-655-9000. That's 954-655-9000, or email her at thealita@att.net. New website coming, and a new email coming also. So look out for those. Thank you, Althea, and your Healing Heavenly Hands, for sponsoring this segment. So, non-Hodgkin lymphoma, sometimes just called NHL for short, or actually just lymphoma. This is a cancer that starts in the cells, in the lymphocyte cells, and we learned what the lymphocyte cells are. Now, as it relates to non-Hodgkin lymphoma, here is some of the information that we're going to look at. What is non-Hodgkin lymphoma? So, I just lost my little bit of information here. We were looking at Hodgkin lymphoma just now. And see, this is what happens when you have all kind of information everywhere. Da 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 da. Let's type of. Okay, here we go. So, types of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Again, it depends on which type it is. When it comes to lymphoma. Now, indolent versus aggressive lymphomas. You have the ones that your indolent lymphomas are the ones that grow and spread slowly. And some indolent lymphomas may not need to be treated right away, but can be watched closely instead. And the most common type in the United States is follicular lymphoma. Now, you also have aggressive lymphomas, and these grow and spread quickly and usually need to be treated right away. The most common type of aggressive lymphoma in the United States is diffuse large B cell lymphoma, DLBCL. Some types of lymphoma, like mantle cell lymphoma, don't fit into either of these categories. It kind of stands out by itself. Now, regardless of how quickly they grow, all non-Hodgkin lymphomas can spread to other parts of the lymph system if not treated. And eventually, they can also spread to other parts of the body, such as the liver, brain, or the bone marrow. There are many different types of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. So, classifying it can be quite confusing, and it's even confusing to doctors. Several different systems have been used, but the most recent system in the WHO, the World Health Organization classification, and the WHO's system groups lymphomas based on one, the type of lymphocyte the lymphoma starts in, how the lymphoma looks under a microscope, the chromosome features of the lymphoma cells, and the presence of certain proteins on the surface of the cancer cells. Now, when it comes to catching lymphoma, you want to, just like any type of cancer, you typically want to catch it early. Screening tests or exams are used to look for a disease in people who have no symptoms. Now, at this time, there are no widely recommended screening tests for non-Hodgkin lymphoma. And this is because no screening tests have been shown to lower the risk of dying from this cancer. Still, in some cases, lymphoma can be found early. The best way to find lymphoma early is to pay attention to possible signs and symptoms. One of the most common symptoms is enlargement of one or more lymph nodes, causing a lump or bump under the skin, which is not usually painful. And this is most often on the side of the neck, in the armpit, or in the groin. Other symptoms can include fever, chills, night sweats, weight loss, feeling tired, and swelling in the abdomen. More often, these symptoms are caused by something other than lymphoma. But it is important to have them checked by a doctor, especially if they don't go away or they get worse. Careful, regular medical checkups are important for people with known risk factors for non-Hodgkin lymphoma, such as HIV infections, organ transplants, autoimmune diseases, or even prior cancer treatment. These people do not often get lymphoma, but they and their doctors should be aware of possible symptoms and signs of lymphoma. So, how then would that get treated? There are a number of ways in which non-Hodgkin lymphoma end up getting treated. You have chemotherapy, which is the use of anti-cancer drugs that are usually injected into a vein or taken by mouth. These drugs enter the bloodstream and reach almost all areas of the body, making this treatment very useful for lymphoma. Chemo is the main treatment for most people with non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Depending on the type and the stage of the lymphoma, chemo may be used alone or combined with other treatments, such as immunotherapy drugs or radiation therapy. Many chemo drugs are useful in treating lymphoma. Often, several drugs are combined. The number of drugs, their doses, and the length of treatment depends on the type and stage of the lymphoma. And some of the drugs that are commonly used to treat lymphoma include alkylating agents like cyclophosphamide, chlorambucil. I'm going to end up with no tongue by the time I'm done calling these types of drugs. Bendamustine, sorry. Ifosfamide, my bad. Ifosfamide. So those are your alkylating agents. And then you have your corticosteroids, like your prednisone and your dexamethasone. Then you have what are called platinum drugs. Cisplatin, carboplatin, and oxyplatin. Then you have purine analogs, fludarabine, and pentostatin, and what's this? Cladribine, 2-CDA. My doctor friends would have to come and tell us about that one. Then you have anti-metabolites. You have anthracyclines, and you have some others. Now, why I just mentioned the group name, because look, hey, listen, some of these drugs, yeah, I would like to have the use of my tongue tonight, for the remainder of this broadcast. So I'm not even gonna get into this. But often drugs from different groups are combined. Well, before I go on, why? I don't know if anybody can answer this question. Why is it that two things, drug names and conditions, have some ridiculously long names? Not only are they ridiculously long, but they're phonetically challenging. You ever notice it? And then they would give these names and then give a simple abbreviation. Okay, let's just call it the abbreviation and leave out the. Is it that you just don't want everybody to be versed in medical terminologies? Whomever it was that came up with some of these drug names and these conditions, I'd like for one of you, a few of you, any of you, to give me a call and let us have a little chit chat, please. 773-789-7839. Easy way to remember it, 773-789-STEW. I want to hear from you. I want to know if anybody can tell me the history behind some of these drug names, because I tell you, it's rough. Now, often drugs from different groups are combined in treating non Hodgkin lymphoma. And one of the most common combinations is called CHOP. Ready for this? Yeah, apart from the fact that it's called TROP. It includes drugs cyclophosphamide, doxorubicin, also known as hydroxydoxorubicin, hydroxydonorubicin. Then you have vincristine, or also known as oncovin, and prednisone. So that's your CHOP, the cyclophosphamide, hydroxydonorubicin, oncovin, and prednisone. Another common combination leaves out doxorubicin, and it's called CVP. Weird, right? So you leave out one thing, and it moves from CHOP to CVP. Don't ask me, I don't make these things up. I only present them to you the way I get them. Chemo is often combined with immunotherapy drugs, especially rituximab or Rituxan. Doctors give chemo in cycles, in which a period of treatment is followed by a period of rest to allow the body time to recover. Each chemo cycle generally lasts for several weeks, and most chemo treatments are given on an outpatient basis. But some might require a hospital stay. Sometimes a patient may get one chemo combination for several cycles and later switch to a different one if the first combination doesn't seem to be working. Then, most chemo drugs given systemically, whether by IV or by mouth, can't reach the cerebral spinal fluid and tissues around the brain and spinal cord. To treat lymphoma that might have reached these areas, chemo may also be given into the CSF, the cerebral spinal fluid, and it's usually referred to as intrathecal chemo. Now, the chemo drugs most often used for this type of chemotherapy are methotrexate and cytarabine. Cytarabine. I left out a syllable there. Now, one of the things that regular listeners to Healthy Love would have heard, especially early in the days of Healthy Love, when I had Dr. Janice J. Love Stone on a lot, when she was with me a lot, we would talk about chemo treatments and the fact that chemotherapy is one of those treatments that doesn't only target cancer cells but affects all cells. So typically those that are going through chemo experience certain things. And some of these side effects, depending on the type and the dose of drugs that are given, and how long the treatment regimen is, they could include, some of these side effects could include hair loss, mouth sores, loss of appetite, nausea and vomiting, diarrhea or constipation, increased chance of infection from a shortage of white blood cells, bleeding or bruising after minor cuts or injuries. This would be as a result of loss of platelets, fatigue, and shortness of breath. And this would be because there are few red blood cells. So oxygenation, becomes reduced. So this is what happens with some of the chemo treatments, depending on the dosage and the intensity and the frequency or the duration. The side effects usually go away after the treatment is finished. And if serious side effects occur, the dose of chemotherapy may be reduced or the treatment may be delayed. Now, there are often ways to lessen the side effects, like some drugs can be given to prevent or to reduce nausea and vomiting. So, of course, you get a drug and it has adverse side effects, then you get another drug for it. And sometimes it ends up being this unforgiving cycle. There are often ways, certain chemo drugs can have other possible side effects, and those would include your platinum drugs, for example, can cause nerve damage, leading to numbness, tingling, or even pain in the hands and feet. Ifosfamide can damage the bladder, and the risk of this can be lowered by giving it along with a drug called Mesna. The doxorubicin can damage the heart, and your doctor may order a test of your heart function before starting you on this drug. Now, my question when it comes to a drug like this is, so if you have a good heart, then you can start taking this drug, which could end up leaving you with a bad heart. So why take this drug? It's just my way of thinking. I don't know. It could just be me. Then bleomycin. This particular drug can damage the lungs, and doctors often test lung function before starting someone on bleomycin. Again, I don't think I need to ask the same question again. Many chemo drugs can actually affect fertility. So that is something else to be taken into consideration. Now, the question is, does it permanently affect fertility? Since a lot of the effects, the side effects of chemotherapy go away after chemotherapy is done. So something like fertility, is that ongoing? Some chemo drugs can raise your risk of developing leukemia several years later. So here it is, you're getting chemo for one particular type of cancer, and you get done with chemotherapy, that cancer goes away, and you end up developing another type of cancer, leukemia. So then what? And this is one of the things that gets me when I hear commercials being run like on TV, commercials for drugs, and they set it up in the first, say, 10 seconds of the commercial. Then another 5 to 10 seconds tells you what it is for, the drug is for. The remaining, if it's a 1-minute commercial, so that's what, 20 minutes So the remaining, sorry, 20 seconds. So the remaining 40 seconds of this commercial is just side effects and dangers. And you'd have to, and you wonder, okay, so why is it that this drug is being put out and being said it is good for me when it has all these possible side effects, including death? Would I stand a better chance of dying from whatever I had than taking this drug and dying from this drug? I'm not saying that people should not take some medication. I'm not saying to not take your medication. So don't get me wrong. I'm just saying some of these drugs that are being put out on the market that have all these side effects that take up the majority of a commercial when it's advertised. Why? How helpful are these drugs in reality? And how many times do they end up with these severe conditions as a result of these drugs, these side effects that cause these severe conditions? How often does that happen? All right, so let me continue with this information about treatment of lymphoma. Tumor lysis syndrome is a possible side effect when chemo is started, especially in patients with large or fast growing lymphomas. Killing the lymphoma cells releases their contents into the bloodstream, and this can overwhelm the kidneys, which cannot get rid of all the substances at once. This now can lead to a buildup of certain minerals in the blood and even result in kidney failure. This excess mineral can lead to heart and nervous system problems, and doctors work to prevent this by giving the patient extra fluids and certain drugs such as sodium bicarbonate, allopurinol, and rasburicase. Again, here I am. It's a DJ before my name, not a DR. And I am wondering, so chemotherapy can shut down my kidneys, but it is good for me in the fight against cancer? Are there any alternatives to this? Ask your healthcare team about what side effects you can expect based on the specific drugs you will receive, and be sure to tell your doctor or nurse if you have any side effects, as there are often ways to help with them, the side effects that is. For example, drugs can be given to prevent or reduce nausea and vomiting. We know that. So can ginger. You know what I'm saying? So if you can avoid giving another drug to prevent a side effect and you can do something natural, shouldn't you go that route? I'm just saying. And when it comes to the treatment of cancer, it's hit or miss. Because throughout life, and as I have seen it, having now had a few family members die from different types of cancers. Cancer, a form of cancer took out both my parents. So yes, I would probably think that I'm at risk, or at higher risk, if you're using the family factor, right? But when you look at chemotherapy and the fact that it can also be the result of, so yeah, I'm stopping mid thought. Yes, I know. But look at it this way. So you have cancer. that can possibly kill you, and you have chemotherapy that can possibly kill you. Basically, we're going for the lesser of the two evils. In chemo, that could possibly kill you, but also possibly kill the cancer, and as a result, give you a little bit more time to live and to live a fruitful life. Is That's how it goes? I'm just asking because when I think about it, at some point in time, I may have to go through chemotherapy. I may end up with that type of cancer. I may end up with prostate cancer. My father died from it. I may end up with some other type of cancer. Not because either of my parents had it, but because of environmental conditions. The types of food that we're getting, the type of air quality, the type of water that we're drinking. Any of these things can contribute to cancer. Because cancer is the overgrowth of cells. So cells that should have a certain lifespan ends up multiplying and living past that. They're not dying when they should, and now you end up with that type of cancer. And this cell extended life, this cell overgrowth, how do we know that some of the things that are used in the production of our foods don't contribute to that? Some of the preservatives that we're having, how do we know that these aren't the things that are preserving the life of these cells that should have died, and making it now you're extending the life of these cells, causing these cancers? So now here we go. We get treated for it, right? So you're going to be, the food you're going to eat, the food we're eating, could possibly be treated or fertilized with drugs that and chemicals that could possibly be cancer causing. And again, once you remember what cancer is, now we can tie back. Well, I guess the science isn't as simple as I am making it out to be. Maybe I'm just being really simple about it. But I am looking at it this way: if something is a preservative or a growth enhancer, then chances are the same way it affects these organic compounds, being plants and animals, the same way it would affect us humans. Because as there are living cells in plants and animals that we consume for food, there are living cells in us. You see the problem when it comes to having GMOs and these CAFOs. You see the problem? You connecting the dots? I'm just trying to shed this bit of light on the situation. So this I remember when I was growing up, there would be this man on a cart, this donkey cart, literally, and you'd hear him coming down the street saying manure, manure. And I didn't live in the country. I lived very much in the town. I lived in the city. And this man would come through the community selling manure. Now, I had quite the yard. And my grandmother would buy manure and throw it at the base of the plants. And we would have awesome reap awesome harvests. You know, papas or papaya, peas, breadfruit, I didn't get any banana. No, we didn't have any banana. Soursop, sweet sop, oranges, limes, mangoes, ackee, coconut, cherries, pineapples, aloe vera. All we all of these were in my backyard when in the house that I grew up in, and the manure that my grandmother would get from the manure man as he rode his cart. This was what was being used in our foods. And I remember when my mother was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, and she started juicing. She had a whole regimen of tablets that she had to take, a bunch of drugs. It was ridiculous. She had something like 80 to 105 or something like that pills that she had to take. Some ridiculous number. And my mother started juicing, and I remember there was one set of tablets that my mother stopped taking. And then she went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Hey, you can't stop taking this." My mother didn't say a word. She had already stopped. Not saying that anybody else should do that. But my mother did it. My mother lived twice as long as the average person with multiple myeloma at the time. She donated her body to science. I tell this story all the time. My mother lived 15 years with multiple myeloma at a time when not much was known about it. My mother died 12 years ago on Valentine's Day. So, when we look at treatment of cancers, I can't help but wonder, are some of these drugs that we're being given to treat these cancers, some of these methods that are being used to treat these cancers, is it just a matter of, raising the bottom line in profits just a little bit higher versus keeping people healthy and alive? You just have to wonder. But I digress. As per information from cancer.org, other types of drugs can also be useful in treating some types of lymphoma, and these drugs work differently from standard chemo drugs. For example, immunotherapy and targeted therapy drugs are helpful for some lymphomas. Mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue, MALT lymphoma, which usually starts in the stomach, is linked to infection with the bacterium H. pylori. Treatment of this infection can make the lymphoma go away, and this is often done with a combination of antibiotics along with drugs called proton pump inhibitors, which lower stomach acid levels. In a similar way, splenic marginal zone B cell lymphoma is sometimes linked to infection with the hepatitis C virus. Treating the infection with antiviral drugs can sometimes shrink these lymphomas or even make them go away. Speaking of going away, thank you, Althea, and your Healing Heavenly Hands for sponsoring this previous segment. Thank you to my current segment sponsor, Reggae Global Entertainment. Reggae Global will act as your booking agents, handle your tour management, take care of your video design, graphic design, business registration, legal service referral, marketing and promotion, music production, and so much more. Give them a call, 954-804-8199. Brand new number, 954-804-8199. You give them a call between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Tell them you heard about them on the Night Shift with DJ Kevin Stew. What can they do for you? All right. So Thank you very much, Reggae Global, for sponsoring this segment. Um, so, okay. That was looking at non Hodgkin lymphoma in adults. Let me look real quickly. I want to look real quickly at lymphoma, non Hodgkin lymphoma in children. I want to look at lymphoma in the skin. And this other condition that I had not come across until looking at this information called Waldenstrom macroglobulinemia. I don't know if anybody else had ever heard of this. I had not heard of it until looking at this information on lymphoma. Now, so non-Hodgkin lymphoma in children. What causes it? Again, a risk factor is anything that might affect a person's chance of getting cancer. And different cancers have different risk factors. Researchers have found some factors that can increase a child's risk of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. But most children that are diagnosed do not have any known risk factors that can be changed. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma is rare in children in general, but is more common in older children than in younger ones. It is also more common in boys than it is in girls, and in white children more common in white children than in black children. The reasons for these gender and racial differences unknown. Some types of immune system problems have been linked with a higher risk of non-Hodgkin lymphoma in children. Some children are born with an abnormal immune system because of genetic syndrome, something inherited. Along with an increased risk of serious infections, these children also have a higher risk of developing non-Hodgkin lymphoma and sometimes other cancers. And these syndromes include Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome, severe combined immunodeficiency syndrome, SCID, ataxia telangiectasia. I tell you, punishment. Common variable immunodeficiency and X-linked lymphoproliferative syndrome. Children who have had organ transplants are treated with drugs that weaken their immune system to prevent it from attacking the new organs. These children have an increased risk of developing non-Hodgkin lymphoma that is almost always caused by Epstein-Barr virus. And the risk depends on which drugs and what doses are used. Infection with HIV can also weaken the immune system, and children with HIV generally get the infection from contact with their mother's blood, usually before or during birth. HIV infection is a risk factor for developing non-Hodgkin lymphoma. So doctors may recommend that children with NHL be tested for HIV infection. Radiation exposure may be a minor risk in childhood non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Survivors of atomic bombs and nuclear reactor accidents have an increased risk of developing some types of cancer. Leukemia and thyroid diseases are the most common, but there's a slightly increased risk of non-Hodgkin lymphoma as well. Patients treated with radiation therapy for other cancers have a slightly increased risk of non-Hodgkin lymphoma later in life. But it usually takes many years for this to develop. So the secondary cases of non-Hodgkin lymphoma are more common in adults than in children. So again, it could have been caused from treatment being received as a child that you end up with the virus as an adult. Is there another way that treatment can be administered? Patients treated, okay, so yeah, the possible risks from fetal or childhood exposure to lower levels of radiation, such as from X-ray tests or CT scans, are not known for sure. If there is an increased risk for non-Hodgkin lymphoma or other cancers, it is likely to be small. But to be safe, most doctors recommend that pregnant women and children do not get these tests unless they're absolutely needed. So, if there's a broken bone, or when doing dental work, I guess those would be considered absolutely necessary. Right? In areas of Africa where Burkitt lymphoma is common, chronic infection with both malaria and Epstein-Barr virus is an important risk factor. EBV has been linked with as much as 90% of Burkitt lymphomas in Africa. In the United States, Epstein-Barr virus has been linked with about 15% of Burkitt lymphomas. It is also linked to lymphomas that occur after an organ transplant. EBV infection is lifelong, although it doesn't cause serious problems in most people. In Americans who are first infected with Epstein-Barr virus as teens or young adults, it can cause infectious mononucleosis, sometimes known simply as mono. We touched on this earlier. Most Americans have been infected with EBV by the time they're adults, but the infection seems to occur later in life in the United States than in Africa, which may help explain why it is less likely to cause childhood lymphoma in the United States. Exactly how Epstein-Barr virus is linked to non-Hodgkin lymphoma is not completely understood, but it seems to have to do with the ability of the virus to infect and alter B lymphocytes. Some research has suggested that family history of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a brother or sister or a parent, might raise the risk of lymphoma. Lymphoma risk may be also higher in children of older mothers. But more research is needed to confirm these findings. But if there's an increased risk tied to these factors, typically they're saying it is small. Let me get some water here. Now, there's also lymphoma of the skin. And if you have a skin lymphoma or close to someone that does, again, knowing what to expect can help you to cope. So, what do we know about skin lymphomas? What causes lymphoma of the skin? Again, some risk factors can make persons more likely to get lymphoma of the skin, but it is not clear. Again, one of the things that we learned last week is that nobody knows exactly what causes lymphoma. So, lymphoma of the skin, it's not exactly clear how these factors might increase risk. Scientists have learned how certain changes in DNA inside normal lymphocytes might cause them to become lymphoma cells. And DNA is a chemical in which our cells that make up our genes which control how our cells function. And we usually look like our parents because they're the source of our DNA, but DNA affects more than just how we look. Some genes control when our cells grow, divide into new cells, and die at the right time. What is called apoptosis. Certain genes that help cells grow, divide, or live longer are called oncogenes. Genes that help cells division under control or cause cells to die at the right time are called tumor suppressor genes. Cancers can be caused by DNA changes that turn on oncogenes and turn off tumor suppressor genes. Some people inherit DNA mutations or changes from a parent that increase their risk of developing some types of cancer, but lymphoma of the skin is not one of the types of cancers often caused by inherited mutations. DNA changes related to lymphoma of the skin are usually acquired after birth rather than being inherited. And some of these acquired changes may have outside causes such as infections, but often occur for no apparent reason. They seem to appear to happen more often as we age, which may help explain why most types of skin lymphomas occur in older people. Again, let me ask this question. And I could be reaching. I could be very much off base. But when you look at information like this, where it says some acquired changes may have outside causes, such as infections, but often they occur for no apparent reason. If there's one thing that we have learned from science, is that there's cause and there's effect. And typically, when we see the effects of something, it comes from something causing it. Right? If it's an effect, then something had to trigger it. So, when it is said that some of these changes may have outside causes, infections are not the only things that could cause change. You also have drugs and chemicals. So here you have environmental factors that come into play when you look at chemicals. Some of the chemicals that are in the air, some byproducts from combustion, from industrialization on a whole, from production. So you have all these things being introduced into our atmosphere. If we are out there, so whether it be in the air or in the water, chances are it is going to get into what we consume, including the air and the water. So if there are DNA altering compounds, if there's anything that can affect how cells operate, then we're exposed to it. So when I read something like this being presented from an organization like cancer.org, my simple mind asks the simple questions. So is it only infections that can cause these things? Or do we need to consider other things too, like what we're consuming and where it is being grown or manufactured? What are there any chemical plants near the farms that we're getting our foods from? What are some of the fertilizers that are being used? What are some of the chemicals, the pesticides that are being used to treat the produce that we're getting? What are some of the antibiotics or the foods? How is the food created or prepared that the animals that we're consuming as a part of our meals, that they're being fed? Now this starts to change how we're looking at things, doesn't it? Just ever so slightly. Scientists are learning about the exact gene changes that cause skin lymphomas, but even though they have found some of these gene changes, they still do not know why these changes occur. I was gonna say something about the vaccine, but I'm not based on what I just read. But I'm gonna leave the vaccine out of this tonight. The immune system seems to play an important role in some skin lymphomas. People with weakened immune systems, such as people with acquired immunodeficiency syndrome (AIDS), and people who have had an organ transplant, seem to have a greater chance of developing skin lymphoma. But again, it is not clear why. Some types of infections might also raise the risk of skin lymphomas, and these might be because of infections, because the infections force the body's immune system to constantly be active. As more lymphocytes are made to fight the infection, there is a greater chance that some of these cells will have DNA mutations in key genes, such as which might eventually lead to lymphoma. Again, researchers are still trying to study it because don't know what it is, don't know what caused it. But in the midst of not knowing what causing it, we're applying more science to things like farming, and that is livestock farming as well as produce farming. We're still applying more science because, let's face it, there are more mouths to feed and less people preparing, or less people getting the produce to the tables. There was a time when more families were engaged in farming. Now you have less families engaged in farming and more consumers going to supermarkets and stores wanting to buy the products. So to provide for all of these people, you're going to have to enhance production. See the problem? If you don't, I can't help you. So, this condition here now that I wanted to look at real quickly before we get into musical therapy and close out the night shift night, the healthy love for tonight. We have to ask the question about Waldenstrom macroglobulinemia. Again, I had never heard about it prior to looking up this information on lymphoma. WM is a type of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. The cancer cells make large amounts of abnormal protein called a macroglobulin. Another name for WM is lymphoplasmacytic lymphoma. Lymphoplasmacytic lymphoma. This condition used to be called Waldenstrom's macroglobulinemia. So some people refer to it as just simply Waldenstrom's. Now, to understand WM, it helps to know about the functions of the lymphatic tissue or lymphoid tissue in the body, which we looked at the beginning of this broadcast. WM is a cancer that starts in the B cells. Remember we talked about B cells and T cells? Well, WM starts in the B cells. The cancer cells in people with WM are similar to those of two other types of cancer: multiple myeloma, which my mother passed away from, and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Multiple myeloma is considered a cancer of plasma cells, and non-Hodgkin lymphoma is a cancer of lymphocytes. WM have features of both plasma cells and lymphocytes and are called lymphoplasmacytoid. WM makes large amounts of certain types of antibodies: immunoglobulin M or IgM, which is known as a macroglobulin. Each antibody made by the WM cells is the same. So it is called a monoclonal protein, or just an M protein. The buildup of this M protein in the body can lead to many of the symptoms of WM, including excess bleeding, problems with vision, and nervous system problems. The WM cells grow mainly in the bone marrow, where they can crowd out the normal cells that make the different types of blood cells. This can lead to low levels of red blood cells called anemia, which can make people feel tired and weak. It can also cause low number of white blood cells, which makes it hard for the body to fight infection. The numbers of platelets in the blood can also drop, leading to increased bleeding and bruising. Lymphoma cells can also grow in organs like the liver and spleen, causing these organs to swell and leading to abdominal pain. So this kind of gives you an idea of what WM is, right? So what then do we know about preventing it? Can WM be prevented? That would probably be the big question. And most of the risk factors for WM, such as older age or monoclonal gammopathy of undetermined significance, or MGUS, can't be changed or controlled. So there's no way to prevent cancers that might be related to these risk factors. Some research suggests that people with hepatitis C may be more likely to develop WM. There's currently no vaccine to prevent hepatitis C, but there are ways to lower your risk of getting it, such as avoiding known risk factors like injection drug use or unprotected sex with many partners. Hep C can also be treated effectively in many cases, although it is not known how this might affect a person's risk of WM. That's just the kind of news that you'd want to hear, right? That, hey, prevention is unknown. Again, what causes it? Some people inherit DNA changes from their parents, and we from tonight, from the information that we've been looking at tonight, we realize that DNA changes are a part of what could possibly be causes for some of these cancers. So some people inherit DNA changes from a parent that increase their risk for certain types of cancers. And researchers are studying families that have many cases of WM to try to find the genes that might cause this disorder in some people. The DNA changes found in WM cells are usually acquired after birth. And again, some of these acquired changes may have outside causes, but often, again, happen for no apparent reason. They seem to happen more often as we age, which again explains why it would happen in older people. Research has found that 9 times out of 10, WM cells have a mutation in a gene known as MYD88, which normally helps immune system cells signal each other and helps keep them alive. The DNA change in this gene might make it stay turned on all the time, which might help the WM cells to survive longer than they should. So the natural apoptosis doesn't happen. Sometimes WM cells have other kinds of DNA changes. In each human cell, the DNA is packaged in 23 pairs of chromosomes. In some WM cells, a piece of a chromosome is missing. This is called a deletion. The most common chromosome defect seen in WM is a deletion of part of chromosome 6. It is not clear exactly which gene this might affect. Another type of chromosome defect in WM is called translocation. In a translocation, a piece of one chromosome becomes attached to a different chromosome. Chromosome changes like these can cause oncogenes to be turned on or tumor suppressor genes to be turned off. Researchers have found that some patients with WM have important changes or defects in some bone marrow cells. These changes might have also help cancer cells grow. Certain cells in the bone marrow called dendritic cells release a hormone called interleukin 6, IL-6, that helps normal plasma cells and plasmacytoid lymphocytes grow. Excess IL-6 production by these cells appear to be an important factor in the development of WM. Again, scientists are learning about the exact gene changes that cause WM. But even though they have found some of these gene changes, they do not know why these changes occur. So, one thing we can take away from all this information tonight about lymphoma is that doctors don't know what causes it. Doctors don't know who will be affected by it, for sure. Chemotherapy can treat it, but chemotherapy can also cause other things to happen. The side effects of it, including kidney failure. There are different types of lymphoma, being your Hodgkin, your non-Hodgkin, which is actually split in two because you have non-Hodgkin children and non-Hodgkin adult. And then you also have this condition called WM, Waldenstrom macroglobulinemia. How exactly do we navigate through this? I don't know. But one thing is for sure, we are going to need to be mindful of what we're consuming. We need to be mindful of the foods that we're eating and how they're manufactured, the farming processes, the condition of the water that we're drinking, byproducts from manufacture in the manufacture industry, how they're being disposed of. We're gonna need to be more mindful of all these things. Why? Because if cancer is the overgrowth or the continued growth of cells that possibly should have died but are not dying, so their life is extended, and now they're grouping together and forming these cancer cells. Excuse me. What is it that is causing that to happen? Something is causing this change in DNA. What causes DNA changes? These are for me basic science questions for the scientists. But I guess I'm oversimplifying it. Maybe the answer is in the simplification of it. I often say the people would sometimes say that I'm a complex guy, and I say, I'm very simple. But the problem is my the complexity lies in my simplicity. So I guess in the case of cancer, maybe that's just it. It is so simple to when realizing what it is that possibly causes cancer, that it is complicated, because it possibly is involved in every aspect of our lives, from the clothes we wear to the food we eat, to what we use to clean our bodies, wash our hair, to smell good. Yeah, all those things. I guess only the scientists can tell us, right? They're the ones that would know. We're gonna take a quick little break. I'm gonna bounce off Facebook Live and jump into musical therapy. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for giving me an ear. And feel free to get in touch with me. 773-789-STEW, 773-789-7839. Give me some feedback. Let me hear what you're thinking. Do support the podcast, The Night Shift with DJ Kevin Stew. You can search for it everywhere. Check it out on all the podcast platforms that you use. Feel free to donate to the podcast to help keep it going. The podcast site is now up. The Night Shift with DJ Kevin Stew .wordpress.com. Go there. You can support, give your support through that medium also. So, all these options are available. The podcast for tonight's broadcast will be available by tomorrow. Definitely before midday tomorrow. So you can look out for it if if you only caught a piece of it and you wanted to do the whole thing. There, it's also on Facebook Live. It will be also on YouTube. So places to go. And of course, if you search through The Night Shift with DJ Kevin Stew on YouTube, you will find where I have looked at cancer before on a number of occasions. This isn't the first time, but it is the first time I'm looking at lymphoma specifically. And it's some good information to know. Again, Waldenstrom macroglobulinemia. Never heard of it before in my life. But we learned about it tonight. Just a little bit about it. There's more information. You can go ahead and check it out yourself. Alright, we're going to take a quick little break and come back for musical therapy. Thank you to the affiliates. One Harmony Radio, NIE Radio, Island Worldwide, WGLRO, the Foundation Radio Network, ClintonLindsay.com, Olliwap Radio, Dosik Media Group. Thank you very much. I truly appreciate love each and every one of you. Gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Pulsey Media Group, innovative streaming and recording, has done it again. A new way to get your business in full view of your neighborhood consumer through AdShare TV. It's available in your neighborhood today. It's easy. Just call us 754-999-6020. Become a host today and place a TV monitor in a strategic location so it's easy to see. Get a 1-minute video ad or longer that plays anywhere in our network. Can't be a host? No problem. For a few dollars, we'll run your 30-second video ad. A host can run announcement specials like buy one get one free or discount ads. Let's turn your flyers into a 30-second video with music or a voiceover, or let us create and run your video ad with a spokesperson. Take advantage of our early enrollment discount. Join us today. Your ad will be seen at least 30 times per day in your AdShare TV neighborhood. It's easy. Just call us 754-999-6020. AdShare TV, part of Pulsey Media Group.
It takes an entire village to raise a child. Hello, I'm Paul Campbell, here to talk about Palace. Peace and Love Academic Scholarship. This non-profit group supports students facing serious obstacles from entering or continuing their studies, not because the grades are failing, but due to the lack of financial support.
Over the past 8 years, Palace has awarded 600 scholarships valued at approximately 50.3 million Jamaican dollars, or 415,000 US dollars.
Together, we must build a better future for our children. Please visit www.palace1.org and make your donation to brighten the future of a deserving child. Palace, preserving young minds for posterity.
Yes, my people. Check out I Red Funks on Reggae Global Radio every Saturday at 8 p.m. with Kev Stew, where I'll give you a pre-life. Brand new. Good for you. Kick it like a ball if you don't see a dance hall. You hear that?
Greetings and salutations, one and all. You're invited to tune in to the night shift with DJ Kevin Stew. It airs on Mondays with Community and Finance, Tuesdays with Healthy Love, and Wednesdays with Real Talk from 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Come spend some time interacting in the stew pot where we keep things bubbling and wind down in musical therapy. The night shift with DJ Kevin Stew is on kevinstew.com, where you're encouraged to have acceptance through enlightenment.
It's Christina representing for DJ Kevin. You see me, I say, I don't know the boss. You see me, I say, DJ Kevin Stew and the night shift radio show. Yo, the thing, turn up the thing loud. Whoa, DJ Kevin Stew at the heart of a champion. Never underestimate, just choose him. The silver line behind the dark clouds. DJ Kevin Stew believing, and that's no doubt. Salute the night shift radio show, Christina. It's a hot it up loud. The beast.
Well, I know, say this is Paul Anthony, alongside Lion Rhythms. I grade. We're talking about the herbs. Sequence. We be burning every day, rolling up the letter A. I grade. That's what we say. Under we grades like every day. Let's go. Life we're living, I to the highest side. Top grades like I got straight A's. We stay high for days under me high grade. Letter A, roll up, fire blaze. Bubble up in the jealous and watch me mind frame. Elevate, I dedicate. This one to all of my peeps when you're some medicate. With that grade A, top strain. So I like octane, I'm gassed up, let's bun down. Meds out and puff loud. Give me the confidence for block my nerves in front of tough crowds. Snoop Lion, I am merged through enough clowns. Time to legalize, cause we be burning every day. Rolling up that letter A. That's why we say ganja to bun like every day. Life we living. I to the eyesight. Top grades like I got straight A's. We stay high for days, cause we need that high grade. A plus for your brain waves gain focus.
Welcome back.
Light up, and if you're nauseous, it clear it up. Feel pain, it make it less.
Going through musical therapy. I'm kicking it off with music, new music from Paul Anthony.
So come on, yes, someone
It's called Greedy.
like Bantan, healing every nation and the whole world. One song right now, a 420. Cause we be burning every day. Rolling up that letter A. That's why we say blaze it at least 3 times a day. Life we living. I to the highest height. Top grades like I got straight A's. We stay high for days.
Yeah, some scholarship thing, you know.
I grade, yeah.
Yeah, man, it's all about a high grade.
Out of drinking alcohol, smoking herbs, smoking cigarette. Which one is more harmful to health? Look at
This is Jadan.
things they say about you and true. I feel so free when I'm smoking my weed. Babylon, just give me a ease, please. I beg you, just give me a breeze. I just spliff after spliff after spliff.
Yeah, man, since I started with it,
After lift after
why not?
Yes, me born spliff after spliff after spliff. Pablo tell them this is one your natural mistake. Spliff after spliff after spliff. Till my brain lift after lift after lift. I just spliff after spliff after spliff. You shoulda known this is one your natural mistake. Don't worry about my herbs cause I eat you now by. No, I couldn't make a day go by before getting this vibe. So drug addict, do no bother try when the THC hit the pine eye. Take me to a brand new state of mind where the radar cannot find me. No mining in the cockpit. Spliff after spliff. Till my brain lift after lift. I just spliff after spliff. Pablo tell them this is one your natural mistake. Spliff after spliff. Till my brain lift after lift. If you're born spliff after spliff, then you woulda know about the natural mistake. Me need a Jamaican or call you for indica. And if you good, me will call you for Z. West brain bubble. From yesterday, him say him have a pound for me. I'm a new see a homegrown. I owe that I call me past that phone. G Cole in a South Florida a room. Flex FM, Mellow FM, me feel irate. Spliff after spliff. Till my brain lift after lift. Yes, my bun spliff after spliff. Enough is enough. Don't you virus. Vicious 19 year.
I haven't played this one in a minute.
Dirty virus.
Ed Robinson channeling his inner Peter Tosh.
Vicious 19 year.
Talking about the dirty virus.
Yo, ever since that day you came on this earth, you cause us pain. You make us hurt.
Be sure to catch Ed Robinson
Yes,
on the Reggae Lane.
blind, but now the world can
On the
see.
Reggae Global Radio
Not alone around here.
every Wednesday and Thursday.
And flee. Watch when a Lucifer.
Go to reggaeglobalradio.com. Check the schedule.
Vicious 19 year. You know, welcome round here. Dirty Some of them oppressors say when you leave. You like an evil spirit, you locked us down. We could not make one single sound. But like a yard man, we'll use the words and free the nation, free as the birds. Together we'll chant, dirty virus. And that's a good word. Vicious 19 year. It's a easy Buddha one. Dirty virus. You try stop us, we'll stop. Vicious 19 year. Right over the
It's been a long, long time since I've embraced someone like you. For I never knew this love existed before.
This is Lady Tia.
Yes, you swept me off my feet. I'm head over heels in love, and there's no.
The track is called Bring It On.
You can tell by the way you see me glow that my love has overflowed.
Just this past weekend,
Feel right now, it's all because of you.
Lady Tia graced the stage,
Up and keep me warm. Give me good
dominated by Mr. Lee Kelly.
baby. Just bring it on.
I tell you, the people loved her.
Don't let us go to where we've never been before. You and me, baby, lost in ecstasy. Whisper sweet words in my ear. Show me how much you care. Just keep on holding me. Let's live out this fantasy. You can tell by the way you see me glow that my love has overflowed. The vibes I feel right now, it's all because of you. Said you wanna wrap me up and keep me warm. Give me good love from dusk till dawn. I'm ready, baby. Just bring it on. Just bring it on. Just bring it on.
Thank you, Lord, for what you've done for me. You touched my life with your blessing. Thank you, Lord, for what you're doing now.
The late Yvonne Sterling,
Thank you, Lord,
working out with Little Lenny
little thing.
and Richard Stevens.
Thank you, Lord, for another chance to sing. I'm gonna sing along, sing.
It's called Thank You, Lord.
I was in a bad, bad situation. I live each day in serious desperation. I tell you, thought my life was over, but you rescued me. With all my heart, I'm giving you the glory. Thank you, Lord, for what you've done for me. You touched my life with your blessing. Thank you, Lord, for what you're doing now, right now. Thank you, Lord, for every little thing. That's right, you know I'm not stressing. Thank you, Lord, for another chance to sing.
Make little any tell them this. Them say that one of the door, but dash it way. Only for people gone to where I'm in there. You have your life and ambition, still up on a mission. Now one more chance, you are big out there. If each one help one, better must come. So when you get your blessing, God and go share some. And when you see another man fall on the ground, lift him up, no bother keep him down. Mama Sterling sing.
Thank you, Lord, for what you've done for me.
You touch my life with your blessing.
Thank you, Lord, for what you're doing now, right now. Thank you, Lord, for every little thing.
That's why you know I'm not stressing.
Thank you, Lord, for another chance to sing.
So let me tell you something. Some people need a little food up on the table. I don't know where to find them. And you should give a little blessing if you're able. With humbleness behind it. No greater deed, no greater love. No better way to show it. There is no feeling like the way I feel when I know I'm helping.
Thank you, Lord, for done for me. Mama Sterling sing. Thank you, Lord, for what you're doing now. Mama Sterling sing. Thank you, Lord, for every little thing. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Lord, for another chance to sing. I'm gonna sing along, sing along. Thank you.
Hey, beautiful woman, you're radiantly
I
smile.
want to thank you each and everyone for tuning in tonight once again. Thank you to all the affiliates. Inviting you to join me tomorrow as I close out the night shift week. Real Talk Wednesday. Until then, I want to invite you to look out for members of your community. Community is not just the development that you live in, but it spreads far and wide.
Someday I gotta make you mine.
The people you pass on the bus, on the plane, on the boat, or the train, whether you walk, ride, or drive, these are members of your community. Do something good for one of them today, because you never know who's going to do something good for you tomorrow.
Child, my own.
My name is DJ Kevin Stewart. I would like to do it to you, for you, and with you. Every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday right here. The night shift to DJ Kevin Stewart. Closing out with Phil Watkins working out with Anne Marie. Track called Give You My Love. Good morning, good afternoon, good day to you wherever you are in the world. From right here in South Florida, I bid you a good night.
But in my past, I didn't last. I don't wanna move too fast. Scared to give my heart away, even from my past mistakes. If it's real, then you will wait. I wanna give you my all. Then you give me your love. If you do stick around, then you can satisfy all my needs.
Girl, I can't wait to hold you in my arms. And I just want to please you all night long.
The love we share is more than just a fleshly thing. So take my hand and bow before the King of Kings.
Greetings and salutations, one and all. You're invited to tune in to the night shift with DJ Kevin Stew. It airs on Mondays with Community and Finance, Tuesdays with Healthy Love, and Wednesdays with Real Talk from 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Come spend some time interacting in the stew pot where we keep things bubbling and wind down in musical therapy. The night shift with DJ Kevin Stew is on kevinstew.com, where you're encouraged to have acceptance through enlightenment.